Stop abusing those dogs right now." Renee Blackwell's voice cut through the afternoon air as she aimed her phone camera at Dr. Yara Pemberton, who was carefully bandaging a German Shepherd's wounded paw in the veterinary clinic's parking lot. The injured canine unit dogs lay on clean blankets under the bright daylight, their handlers having rushed them here after a drug raid gone wrong. "I'm calling 911. This is animal cruelty." Renee stepped closer, her red blazer and white pants pristine as she filmed what she was convinced was evidence. Dr. Pemberton looked up from the sedated police dog, her green scrubs blood-stained from emergency surgery, her hands steady despite the accusation. "Ma'am, I'm a veterinarian treating injured police dogs." But Renee wasn't listening. She was already dialing, demanding officers arrest the suspicious person torturing innocent animals, completely unaware she was about to humiliate herself in front of the very cops whose dogs were being saved. Welcome to Frost Folktales. This is where we tell the stories of those who were underestimated, dismissed, and targeted, yet chose courage over silence. If these stories move you, subscribe and be part of a community that refuses to let them fade into the background. The fluorescent lights from the clinic windows cast harsh shadows across the parking lot as Dr. Yara Pemberton worked with practiced precision on Rex, the larger of the two injured German Shepherds. The drug raid had gone sideways 3 hours earlier, and both canine units had taken bullet fragments and glass shards when suspects threw explosive devices. Rex's left hindquarter showed deep lacerations, while Bruno, still unconscious on the adjacent blanket, had taken shrapnel to his chest and front legs. Officer Calvin Monroe stood nearby in his short-sleeved uniform, sweat beading on his forehead as he watched his partner receive treatment. His radio crackled intermittently with updates from the crime scene, but his full attention remained on Rex. The German Shepherd's breathing had stabilized, but Calvin knew without immediate veterinary intervention, both dogs would have died before reaching the nearest animal hospital 40 minutes away. Dr. Pemberton's blue jacket lay folded beside her medical kit, her green scrubs already stained with blood and antiseptic. Her movements were methodical, each suture placed with military precision learned during her Army Veterinary Corps service. She had been cleaning equipment inside the clinic when Officer Monroe's patrol car screamed into the parking lot, emergency lights flashing. That's when Renee Blackwell had noticed the scene from across the street. "What are you doing to those poor animals?" Renee demanded, her phone held high as she recorded. "I can see blood everywhere. This woman is torturing these dogs." Her voice grew shriller with each accusation, drawing attention from passers-by who slowed their cars to witness the confrontation. Dr. Pemberton looked up calmly, her dark eyes meeting Renee's furious gaze. "Ma'am, I'm Dr. Yara Pemberton, a licensed veterinarian. These are police canine units injured in the line of duty. I'm providing emergency medical treatment to save their lives." "Don't lie to me." Renee stepped closer, her red blazer catching the afternoon sunlight. "I know what I'm seeing. You're some kind of dog-fighting person torturing these innocent animals." She continued filming, her camera capturing Dr. Pemberton's bloodied hands as they worked to close Rex's wounds. Officer Monroe stepped forward, his badge clearly visible. "Ma'am, please step back. Dr. Pemberton is helping my partner. These dogs were injured during a police operation and need immediate medical attention." Renee whirled on him, her perfectly styled blonde hair whipping around her face. "Oh, I suppose you're in on this too? Probably getting paid to look the other way while she abuses these poor creatures." Her voice carried across the parking lot, causing more vehicles to slow and several pedestrians to gather at a safe distance. Dr. Pemberton reached into her jacket pocket and withdrew her veterinary license and military identification. "Here are my credentials. I'm a licensed veterinarian and former Army Veterinary Corps officer. I'm treating gunshot wounds and shrapnel injuries sustained during a drug raid operation." Renee barely glanced at the documents. Those could be fake. Anyone can print fake IDs these days. She turned her phone toward Officer Monroe. This officer is obviously being bribed or threatened. I'm documenting everything for the authorities. The irony wasn't lost on Dr. Pemberton that Renee was promising to call authorities to report the very officer standing 3 feet away. But she maintained her professional composure. Her military training had taught her to work under pressure, and civilian harassment paled in comparison to treating wounded animals under enemy fire in Afghanistan. "Ma'am, please lower your voice," Dr. Pemberton said quietly, returning her attention to Rex's wounds. "You're causing stress to injured animals who need calm surroundings for treatment. If you're genuinely concerned about their welfare, please allow me to work. Don't tell me what to do." Renee's voice reached a fever pitch. "I'm protecting these animals from you." She held her phone higher, ensuring her camera captured every detail. "Everyone watching my live stream can see what's really happening here." Dr. Pemberton's jaw tightened slightly, the first crack in her professional demeanor. Live stream? This woman was broadcasting her accusations to potentially thousands of viewers without understanding the situation. The implications for her veterinary practice and reputation could be devastating if this footage went viral with false context. Officer Monroe tried again, his voice strained with worry for his K9 partner. "Ma'am, Dr. Pemberton has been treating police dogs for 5 years. She's the most qualified veterinarian in the city for trauma care. Please let her work. Rex is bleeding internally." That's exactly what someone involved in organized dogfighting would say. Renee pointed accusingly at both of them. "You're probably running some kind of underground dogfighting ring using police dogs. I've read about police corruption." The accusation hit Dr. Pemberton like a physical blow. Dog fighting. The very practice she dedicated her career to combating through veterinary medicine and community education. Her hands momentarily stilled on Rex's bandages as anger flared in her chest. Hot and immediate, but Rex whimpered softly, bringing her back to the moment. 2 injured animals lay before her, their lives dependent on her skill and focus. Whatever damage this woman might cause to her reputation, whatever lies she might spread on social media, these dogs needed her now. Dr. Pemberton took a deep breath and resumed her work, her voice steady despite the rage building inside her. "I understand you're concerned about animal welfare. That's commendable. However, these dogs will die without immediate treatment. I'm asking you to please step back and allow me to save their lives. I'm not falling for your lies." Renee's phone captured close-up footage of Dr. Pemberton's hands working on Rex's wounds, the blood and surgical instruments looking ominous without proper context. "Look at this, everyone. Look how she's cutting into this poor dog." This is exactly what dog fighters do to make animals more aggressive. Several bystanders had now gathered at the edge of the parking lot, drawn by Renee's shouting and the obvious presence of injured animals. Dr. Pemberton could hear their murmured conversations, catching fragments of confusion and concern. Without context, she realized how the scene might appear to uninformed observers. Renee pulled out her personal phone while continuing to film with the other. "I'm calling 911 right now." She dialed with one hand, her voice becoming even more theatrical. "Yes, hello? I need police immediately. I'm witnessing animal cruelty in progress at Pemberton Veterinary Clinic on Maple Street. There's a suspicious person torturing police dogs in the parking lot." Dr. Pemberton's military training kicked in fully now, the same mental discipline that had carried her through combat zones. External chaos meant nothing. Mission focus meant everything. Save the dogs, deal with consequences later. She turned to Officer Monroe while continuing to suture Rex's deepest laceration. "How long since the incident occurred?" "About 4 hours ago," he replied, his eyes darting nervously between his injured partner and the increasingly hostile woman filming them. Bruno took the worst of it when the first explosive went off. "Ma'am, there are officers on the way," Renee shouted into her phone. The woman claims to be a veterinarian, but she's clearly torturing these poor police dogs. I have everything on video. Send multiple units. Dr. Pemberton finished Rex's primary treatment and moved to Bruno, whose breathing had become more labored. The German Shepherd's chest wounds were deeper than she'd initially assessed, and internal bleeding was likely. Her hands worked quickly, checking pulse points and examining entry wounds from shrapnel. Officer Monroe knelt beside Bruno, his voice tight with emotion. He saved my life 2 months ago during a domestic violence call. Took down an armed suspect who had a knife to my throat. The personal connection between officer and canine partner was something Dr. Pemberton understood intimately from her military service. These weren't just working animals. They were brothers in arms, family members who put their lives on the line alongside their human partners. Your sob story doesn't fool me. Renee continued filming, her social media audience growing as viewers shared her live stream. I know dogfighting when I see it. This whole police officer story is obviously rehearsed. Dr. Pemberton looked up from Bruno's wounds, her dark eyes meeting Renee's gaze with quiet intensity. Ma'am, I've dedicated my entire adult life to saving animals. I served 2 tours in Afghanistan, treating military working dogs. I've never harmed an animal in my life, and I won't start now by letting these 2 die because of your misunderstanding. The conviction in her voice gave Renee momentary pause, but she quickly recovered her righteous anger. Military service doesn't mean anything. Lots of criminals are veterans. That just means you learned advanced torture techniques. The insult to her military service crossed a line that Dr. Pemberton hadn't known existed until this moment. Her hands stilled on Bruno's bandages, and for the first time since the confrontation began, she looked directly into Renee's camera. Ma'am, you are watching me save the lives of 2 police dogs who were injured protecting this community from drug dealers. You are witnessing veterinary medicine, not animal abuse. Your accusations are not only false, they're preventing me from providing optimal care to these injured animals. But Renee had gone too far to back down now, her social media audience hanging on every word. She needed to be the hero of this story, the woman who'd exposed animal cruelty and corruption. Don't believe her lies, everyone. I'm the only thing standing between these innocent dogs and this monster. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer with each passing second. Dr. Pemberton returned to treating Bruno's wounds, knowing she had perhaps minutes before police arrived and potentially disrupted her work based on this woman's false reports. Officer Monroe heard the sirens too, recognizing the sound of his fellow officers responding to a call that would paint him and Dr. Pemberton as criminals. The irony was almost unbearable, calling police on police to report the woman who was saving police dogs. As the sirens grew louder, Dr. Pemberton worked with renewed urgency, her military training and veterinary expertise combining in a race against time, false accusations, and the approaching chaos that threatened to destroy everything she'd built. Dr. Yara Pemberton's hands moved with practiced precision as she applied pressure to Rex's wounded shoulder, but her focus was broken by Renee Blackwell's increasingly theatrical voice echoing across the parking lot. This is Renee Blackwell coming to you live from what can only be described as a horrific scene of animal abuse. Renee announced to her phone camera, her red blazer immaculate despite the chaos around her. I am literally watching someone torture these poor defenseless dogs right in front of a police officer who is doing absolutely nothing to stop it. The phone screen showed dozens of viewers joining the live stream, comments flooding in as Renee positioned herself for the best angle. Dr. Yara Pemberton could see the notification numbers climbing rapidly on the screen Renee held just feet away from her patient. As you can see behind me, this woman is causing these animals incredible pain, Renee continued, her voice taking on the practiced cadence of someone accustomed to public speaking. Blood is everywhere, and she's restraining them while inflicting what appears to be severe trauma to their wounds. Rex whimpered softly as Dr. Yara Pemberton carefully cleaned debris from his bullet wound, her green scrubs already stained with blood. Despite her blue jacket's protection, she forced herself to ignore the growing audience both online and in person, focusing entirely on the injured German Shepherd's labored breathing. Officer Calvin Monroe stepped closer to Renee, his short-sleeved uniform damp with sweat from the stress of watching his canine partner suffer while being unable to help. "Ma'am, please, you have to understand that Dr. Pemberton is trying to save their lives. These dogs were shot during a drug raid this morning." "Don't you dare try to gaslight me or my viewers," Renee snapped, spinning the camera to capture Calvin's face. "Everyone can see what's happening here. This officer is clearly complicit in whatever illegal activity is taking place. Look at how nervous he is. Look at how desperate he sounds." The comment section of her live stream exploded with reactions. Viewers were sharing the stream, tagging animal rights organizations, and demanding immediate intervention. Dr. Yara Pemberton could hear the notification sounds chiming constantly from Renee's phone. "Share this stream, people," Renee commanded her growing audience. "We need to make this viral. These animals need our help, and the authorities are obviously compromised." A silver sedan pulled into the parking lot, and Dr. Yara Pemberton felt a wave of relief as she recognized her colleague's vehicle. Dr. Vivian Okafor stepped out wearing an orange top and blue jacket, her medical bag already in hand as she assessed the scene before her. "Yara, I got your emergency message about the canine injuries," Dr. Vivian called out, then stopped abruptly as she took in the crowd, the cameras, and Renee's dramatic gesturing. "What in the world is going on here?" "Vivian, thank God you're here," Dr. Yara Pemberton said without looking up from Rex's bandaging. "I need you to prep an IV for Bruno. He's lost more blood than Rex, and his breathing is getting shallow." Dr. Vivian quickly knelt beside the second German Shepherd, her experienced hands immediately beginning assessment of his injuries. "These are gunshot wounds," she observed, her voice clinical and professional. "How long ago did this happen?" "About 45 minutes. They were injured during a police raid on a drug operation. Calvin here is Rex's handler." "Oh no, you don't," Renee interrupted, stepping between Dr. Vivian and the injured dogs. "Nobody else is touching these animals until proper authorities arrive. I'm not letting you bring in accomplices to help cover this up." Dr. Vivian looked at Renee with bewilderment, then at her colleague, then at Officer Calvin Monroe, who appeared ready to either cry or explode with frustration. "Ma'am, I'm Dr. Vivian Okafor, and this is Dr. Yara Pemberton," Vivian explained calmly. "We're both licensed veterinarians, and these appear to be police dogs that need immediate medical attention." "Nice try, but I'm not falling for whatever story you people have cooked up," Renee replied, her phone still streaming live. "Viewers, now they're bringing in more people to try to intimidate me and stop me from protecting these innocent animals." The live stream viewer count had climbed to over 300 people, and Renee's confidence seemed to grow with each new notification. She began walking in a circle around the scene, providing commentary like a news reporter at a breaking story. "As you can see, they're trying to silence me by bringing in more people to participate in this cover-up. But I won't be intimidated. These dogs deserve justice." Dr. Yara Pemberton caught Dr. Vivian's eye and spoke quietly while continuing to work on Rex. "Vivian, I served 3 tours as a military veterinarian. I've treated combat injuries on working dogs in Afghanistan and Iraq. These wounds are consistent with small-caliber gunfire, probably 9mm rounds based on the entry patterns." "Your experience shows," Dr. Vivian replied, preparing the IV line for Bruno. "This bandaging technique is battlefield-level trauma care. How did you end up treating police dogs in a parking lot?" "Their regular vet was unavailable, and Calvin knew I was the closest certified canine veterinarian. We didn't have time to transport them to the animal hospital across town." Officer Calvin Monroe heard their conversation and moved closer, his voice tight with emotion. "Dr. Pemberton has been treating our canine unit for 5 years. She saved my first partner's life when he was stabbed by a suspect. Rex here trusts her completely." "Stop right there," Renee commanded, shoving her phone toward Calvin's face. "You're admitting on camera that you've been involved in this illegal operation for 5 years. Everyone heard that. You just confessed to years of animal abuse." "That's not what I said at all," Calvin protested, but Renee had already turned back to her camera. "Did everyone catch that? 5 years of this abuse, people. 5 years of these poor animals suffering while corrupt police officers covered it up." Dr. Vivian Okafor stood up slowly, her orange top now stained with Bruno's blood, her face showing the controlled anger of a professional pushed beyond patience. "Ma'am, I don't know what you think you're witnessing, but Dr. Pemberton is performing life-saving veterinary care. These dogs will die without immediate treatment." "More lies," Renee declared to her camera. "Now she's trying to create a sense of urgency to rush me away from documenting this abuse." Classic manipulation tactic. The sound of approaching sirens began to echo in the distance, causing Renee's face to light up with vindication, while Dr. Yara Pemberton felt her stomach tighten with anxiety. She had successfully stabilized Rex's bleeding, and his breathing had improved significantly. But Bruno still needed intensive care. "Perfect timing," Renee announced to her live stream. "The real authorities are finally arriving. Not these compromised local officers, but people who can actually do something about this situation." Dr. Vivian moved closer to Dr. Yara Pemberton, speaking in low tones. "Yara, what happens if they try to stop you from treating these dogs? Then these animals die while we argue about credentials." Dr. Yara Pemberton replied grimly, checking Rex's pulse and finding it stronger than before. "But I won't let that happen. I took an oath as a veterinarian and as a soldier to protect those who can't protect themselves." Renee overheard part of their conversation and pounced on it immediately. "Now they're talking about oaths and soldiers. Viewers, I think we're dealing with some kind of military conspiracy here. This goes deeper than just local animal abuse." The crowd of bystanders had grown to nearly 20 people, drawn by the commotion and the spectacle of Renee's live streaming. Some were trying to get closer to see what was happening, but Renee positioned herself as a barrier between them and the scene. "Stay back, everyone," she commanded with authority. "We can't contaminate the evidence. The police will need to document everything exactly as it happened." Dr. Yara Pemberton worked steadily on Bruno's wounds, her military training allowing her to compartmentalize the chaos around her and focus entirely on the injured animal before her. The German Shepherd's eyes were alert and trusting, showing none of the fear that would be present if he was being abused. "Good boy, Bruno," she whispered, gently stroking his head. "You're going to be fine. Just a little more work, and you'll be back on your feet." Officer Calvin Monroe watched anxiously as the sirens grew louder. "Dr. Pemberton, is there anything I can do to help?" "Just keep talking to Rex. He needs to hear your voice," she replied, never taking her eyes off Bruno's injuries. "And maybe try to explain to the arriving officers what's really happening here before they see this circus and jump to conclusions." Renee Blackwell's live stream had reached over 500 viewers, with comments pouring in faster than anyone could read them. She was in her element now, presenting herself as a crusading hero standing up against corruption and animal abuse. "We're making a difference, people," she told her audience. "This is what happens when ordinary citizens refuse to look away from injustice. When the authorities arrive, they're going to see that we documented everything." Dr. Vivian Okafor finished setting up Bruno's IV line and looked up at her colleague with deep respect. "Yara, I've never seen field trauma care like this outside of veterinary school textbooks. Where did you learn to work under this kind of pressure?" "Kandahar Province," Dr. Yara Pemberton replied simply. "When mortars are falling and you've got wounded military working dogs, you learn to focus on what matters most." The sirens were now very close, and Renee's excitement was palpable as she prepared for what she clearly expected to be her moment of vindication. Her live stream audience continued to grow, and she began encouraging viewers to call their local news stations to ensure the story received proper coverage. Dr. Yara Pemberton made a final check of both dogs' vital signs. Rex was stable and alert, while Bruno's breathing had improved significantly with the IV fluids. Both animals would survive, but they still needed professional surgical care to fully recover from their wounds. As the first police car rounded the corner into the parking lot, emergency lights flashing, Dr. Yara Pemberton took a deep breath and prepared to defend not just her actions, but the lives of the two brave animals she had worked so hard to save. The distant wail of sirens cut through the afternoon air like a blade, growing louder with each passing second. Dr. Yara Pemberton's hands never paused in their methodical work on Bruno's injured leg, but her shoulders tensed as she recognized the sound of her world about to shift dramatically. The German shepherd whimpered softly, his dark eyes trusting despite the pain coursing through his body. Finally! Renee Blackwell's voice rang out triumphantly, her red blazer catching the bright sunlight as she positioned herself strategically near the street. Her phone remained raised, capturing every moment of what she believed would be her vindication. The authorities are here to stop this madness. 3 police cruisers pulled into the clinic's parking lot with practiced precision, their doors opening simultaneously. Detective Owen Barrett emerged from the lead vehicle, his muscular frame filling out his short-sleeved uniform as he surveyed the scene with the calculating gaze of a 15-year veteran. 2 patrol officers flanked him, their expressions professionally neutral as they approached what their dispatcher had described as an animal cruelty situation. Renee Blackwell practically sprinted toward them, her white pants pristine despite the chaos surrounding her. "Officers, thank goodness you're here. This woman has been torturing these poor animals for over an hour." She thrust her phone toward Detective Barrett, the screen displaying her live stream that now boasted nearly 3,000 viewers. "I have everything documented. She's been cutting into them, making them bleed more. It's absolutely barbaric." Dr. Yara Pemberton looked up from Bruno's wounds, her green scrubs now stained with the honest work of emergency veterinary care. "Detective, I'm Dr. Yara Pemberton, licensed veterinarian. These are police K9 units injured in a drug raid earlier today. They need immediate medical attention, and I'm providing emergency treatment." Detective Barrett's expression remained skeptical as he approached the makeshift treatment area. The sight of the injured dogs, medical supplies scattered across clean blankets, and the woman in scrubs created a confusing tableau that didn't match the frantic 911 call they'd received. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to step away from the animals while we assess the situation," Barrett said, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. "Detective, please." Dr. Yara Pemberton's voice carried a tremor she couldn't quite suppress. "This dog has internal bleeding. If I stop now, he could die within minutes. I understand your concern, but these animals need immediate care." Officer Calvin Monroe, who had been standing helplessly to the side during Renee Blackwell's entire tirade, finally found his voice. "Detective Barrett, sir, these are Rex and Bruno from our K9 unit. They were injured during this morning's raid on the warehouse district. Dr. Pemberton here has been treating them since we arrived. She's their regular vet." Renee Blackwell's eyes flashed with indignation. "Don't you see what's happening here? She's obviously manipulated this officer. How convenient that he's suddenly supporting her story now that you've arrived." She turned to face her phone camera, addressing her growing online audience. "This is exactly the kind of corruption we're fighting against, people. The system protecting its own." The crowd of onlookers had grown substantially, drawn by the police presence and Renee Blackwell's increasingly dramatic proclamations. Several people held their own phones, creating a digital amphitheater around the unfolding drama. Dr. Vivian Okafor stood protectively near her colleague, her orange top and blue jacket making her easily identifiable as another medical professional. "Detective, Dr. Vivian Okafor stepped forward, her voice calm but urgent. "I'm Dr. Vivian Okafor, Dr. Pemberton's colleague. I can personally vouch for her credentials and expertise. She's one of the most respected veterinarians in the city, and she's been treating police K-9 units for years." Detective Barrett looked between the two women, then at Officer Monroe, whose face was etched with worry for his K-9 partners. "Ma'am, I'm going to need to see some identification and credentials before we proceed." Dr. Yara Pemberton's heart hammered against her ribs as she realized the precarious nature of her situation. Here she was, trying to save the lives of police dogs, and she might be arrested for her efforts. The irony wasn't lost on her, but the urgency of Bruno's condition forced her to maintain focus. "My veterinary license is in my jacket pocket," she said, carefully continuing to apply pressure to Bruno's wound while nodding toward her blue jacket. "My military ID is in there as well. Dr. Okafor, could you please show the detective?" Dr. Vivian Okafor quickly retrieved the credentials, handing them to Detective Barrett. As he examined the documents, his expression began to shift from suspicion to confusion, then to something approaching embarrassment. "Don't let them fool you." Renee Blackwell's voice crescendoed with desperation. "Anyone can fake credentials these days. Look at what she's doing to those poor animals. She's torturing them." "Ma'am." Detective Barrett turned to Renee Blackwell, his tone becoming noticeably cooler. "I'm going to need you to lower your voice and step back while we investigate." The veterinary license was legitimate, bearing the state seal and Dr. Yara Pemberton's photograph. More impressive still was the military ID, identifying her as a former Army Veterinary Corps officer with an honorable discharge. Detective Barrett found himself looking at a Bronze Star recipient, not the animal abuser he'd expected to find. Officer Calvin Monroe seized the moment to provide context. "Detective, Dr. Pemberton has been treating our K-9 unit for 5 years. She saved my first partner's life after he was stabbed during a domestic violence call. These dogs trust her completely, and they're in the best possible hands." Rex, despite his injuries, had managed to rest his head against Dr. Yara Pemberton's knee, a gesture of complete trust that spoke louder than any credential could. The sight of the injured police dog, seeking comfort from the very woman accused of abusing him, created a powerful visual contradiction to Renee Blackwell's accusations. "This is unbelievable." Renee Blackwell's voice cracked with frustration as she watched her narrative crumbling in real time. "Can't you see they're all in on it together? This is exactly the kind of conspiracy that's destroying our communities." Dr. Yara Pemberton felt a surge of indignation at the continued accusations, but her military training helped her maintain composure. "Detective Barrett, I understand your position, but these animals are critical. Bruno has lost a significant amount of blood, and Rex has potential internal injuries. They need to get to my surgical suite immediately, or we could lose them both." A growing crowd had begun to murmur among themselves, the tide of opinion shifting as the truth became clearer. Several people called out supportive comments to Dr. Yara Pemberton, recognizing her from the community where she'd built a stellar reputation over years of dedicated service. Detective Barrett handed the credentials back to Dr. Vivian Okafor, his decision made. "Dr. Pemberton, please continue your treatment." "Officer Monroe, can you provide me with details about how these animals were injured?" Relief flooded through Dr. Yara Pemberton's system like cool water, though she maintained her professional focus on Bruno's care. "Thank you, Detective. Dr. Okafor, can you please prepare the surgical suite? We need to get Bruno into surgery within the next 20 minutes. "Of course," Dr. Vivian Okafor replied, already moving toward the clinic entrance. "I'll have everything ready." Renee Blackwell stared in disbelief as her moment of heroic intervention transformed into public humiliation. Her live stream comments had turned decidedly negative, with viewers beginning to question her judgment and motivations. The confident righteousness that had carried her through the confrontation began to crack under the weight of reality. "This isn't over," she declared. though her voice lacked its earlier conviction. "I know what I saw, and I won't let this corruption stand." Officer Calvin Monroe knelt beside Rex, gently stroking the dog's head. "You hear that, boy? Dr. Pemberton's going to take good care of you, just like always." He looked up at Dr. Yara Pemberton with genuine gratitude. "Doc, I can't thank you enough for what you're doing. These dogs mean everything to us." Dr. Yara Pemberton managed a small smile despite the lingering adrenaline from her near arrest. "Their family, Officer Monroe. I'd never let anything happen to them if I could prevent it." Detective Barrett approached Renee Blackwell, his expression stern. "Ma'am, I'm going to need to speak with you about filing a false police report. Making unfounded accusations wastes department resources and could have cost these animals their lives." The crowd pressed closer, drawn by the dramatic reversal of fortune. Phones continued recording as Renee Blackwell's social media triumph transformed into a cautionary tale about the dangers of jumping to conclusions. Her red blazer, which had seemed so authoritative earlier, now made her appear almost garish against the backdrop of genuine medical professionals working to save lives. Dr. Yara Pemberton carefully lifted Bruno, preparing to transport him to the surgical suite. The German Shepherd's breathing had stabilized somewhat, but time remained critical. As she carried her patient toward the clinic entrance, she couldn't help but reflect on how quickly circumstances could change, how prejudice and assumption could nearly derail justice, and how the truth, while sometimes delayed, had a way of ultimately prevailing. The afternoon sun continued to shine brightly overhead, illuminating a scene that had transformed from accusation to vindication, from suspicion to support. Yet Dr. Yara Pemberton knew this was only the beginning of a larger conversation about trust, community, and the assumptions people make about others based on appearances rather than actions. The rumble of another police vehicle cut through the tension as a black and white SUV pulled into the clinic parking lot. Dr. Yara Pemberton barely glanced up from Bruno's bandaged shoulder, her focus laser-sharp on checking the German Shepherd's vital signs. The dog's breathing had stabilized, but she needed to monitor for any signs of shock or internal bleeding. "That's Captain Larson," Officer Calvin Monroe said, relief flooding his voice as he recognized the approaching figure. Captain Sophia Larson stepped out of the SUV with the commanding presence of someone accustomed to taking control of chaotic situations. Her muscular frame filled out her short-sleeved uniform with authority, and her steel-gray eyes immediately swept the scene, taking in every detail. At 45, she had earned her rank through 2 decades of exemplary service, and her reputation for fairness was legendary throughout the department. The moment her gaze landed on Dr. Yara Pemberton, recognition flashed across her face, followed immediately by understanding, and then barely contained anger at the situation she was witnessing. "Dr. Pemberton?" Captain Larson called out, her voice carrying across the parking lot with unmistakable familiarity. "What's going on here?" Detective Owen Barrett straightened, clearly relieved to see his superior. "Captain, we have a situation. This woman," he gestured toward Renee Blackwell, "called in a report of animal abuse, but—" "Animal abuse?" Captain Larson's eyebrows shot up as she strode purposefully toward the group. "Detective Barrett, that's Dr. Yara Pemberton, the veterinarian who has been treating our K9 unit for the past 5 years. She's also a decorated Army veteran." The words hit the gathering like a thunderclap. Dr. Yara Pemberton felt a wave of overwhelming relief wash over her, so powerful that her hands trembled slightly as she continued her examination of Bruno. For the first time since this nightmare began, someone with real authority was vouching for her. Renee Blackwell's confident demeanor flickered for just a moment, but she quickly recovered, pointing her phone toward Captain Larson. "Captain, I don't care who you think she is. I witnessed animal cruelty with my own eyes. These dogs were bleeding, and she was providing emergency medical treatment." Captain Larson interrupted, her tone brooking no argument. "Dr. Pemberton, how are Rex and Bruno doing?" "Rex is stable," Dr. Yara Pemberton replied, her voice steady despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm her. "Bruno took a bullet fragment to the shoulder, but I've removed it and cleaned the wound. Both dogs need surgery, but they're not in immediate danger now." Captain Larson nodded, then turned to address the crowd that had gathered. Her voice carried clearly in the afternoon air. "Ladies and gentlemen, let me be absolutely clear about what you're witnessing here. Dr. Yara Pemberton is not only a licensed veterinarian, she's also a Bronze Star recipient who served our country with distinction in the Army Veterinary Corps. She has saved more police dogs' lives than anyone else in this city." The revelation rippled through the crowd like electricity. Dr. Yara Pemberton felt a surge of pride at hearing her military service recognized so publicly. The Bronze Star had been awarded for her actions during a particularly dangerous deployment, when she had risked her life to treat wounded military working dogs under enemy fire. But Renee Blackwell wasn't backing down. If anything, the revelation seemed to make her more desperate. "This is exactly what I'm talking about," she declared, raising her voice for her phone's camera and the growing crowd. "The corruption runs deep. They're all covering for each other. Military, police, it's all the same system protecting its own while innocent animals suffer." Her words drew murmurs from some bystanders, but Captain Larson's expression had gone from professional displeasure to genuine anger. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to stop filming and step back. You're interfering with emergency medical treatment of police officers." "Police officers?" Renee Blackwell scoffed. "These are dogs, and I saw. Rex and Bruno are sworn officers." Officer Calvin Monroe interjected, his voice thick with emotion. "They wear badges, they take oaths, and they put their lives on the line just like any human officer. And Dr. Pemberton," his voice cracked slightly, "she saved my first partner, Max, 3 years ago. He was dying from heat stroke after a pursuit, and she worked on him for 4 hours straight, wouldn't take a break, wouldn't give up. Max lived another 2 years because of her." The crowd had gone quiet, hanging on every word. Dr. Yara Pemberton remembered that day vividly. Max had been near death when they brought him in, his body temperature dangerously high, his organs shutting down. She had refused to leave his side, using every technique she knew to bring him back. When Max finally opened his eyes and licked her hand, Officer Monroe had cried openly. "That's the kind of person Dr. Pemberton is," Captain Larson continued, her voice carrying to every corner of the parking lot. "She served 3 tours overseas, treating military working dogs in combat zones. She's received commendations from generals and colonels. She volunteers at the animal shelter every weekend. And right now, instead of being allowed to do her job saving the lives of 2 wounded officers, she's being harassed and accused of the very thing she's dedicated her life to preventing." Dr. Yara Pemberton felt tears prick at her eyes, not from sadness but from the overwhelming gratitude of finally being seen, truly seen, for who she was rather than what someone assumed about her. The growing confidence in her chest was something she hadn't felt since this ordeal began. Meanwhile, Renee Blackwell was frantically checking her phone. The comments on her live stream had taken a dramatic turn. Where once there had been support and outrage on her behalf, now there was confusion and growing criticism. "Wait, she's a veteran?" One comment read, "Bronze Star recipient, treating police dogs, and this woman is calling it abuse? SMH, lady, you messed up big time. This doctor is a hero." The tide of public opinion was shifting in real time, and Renee Blackwell could see it happening. Her face grew red as she read comment after comment condemning her actions. Dr. Yara Pemberton finished checking Bruno's bandages and moved to examine Rex once more. The Belgian Malinois was alert now, his dark eyes tracking her movements with the intelligence that made him such an effective police dog. She ran her hands gently along his ribs, checking for any signs of internal injury she might have missed. "Good boy, Rex," she murmured, and the dog's tail gave a weak wag. "You're going to be just fine. See?" Officer Monroe said to the crowd. "Look how calm Rex is with her. Dogs know people. They can sense character. If Dr. Pemberton meant him any harm, Rex would never be that relaxed." It was true, and several people in the crowd nodded in recognition of that simple wisdom. Rex had been trained to detect threats, to be wary of strangers, but with Dr. Yara Pemberton, he was completely at ease. Captain Larson pulled out her radio. "Dispatch, this is Captain Larson. I need animal control to respond to 1247 Maple Street, not for any emergency, but to officially document the professional veterinary care being provided to Officers Rex and Bruno. Also, get me a supervisor from Animal Services. I want them to see exactly what proper emergency veterinary treatment looks like." The message was clear to everyone listening. This was not animal abuse. This was exemplary care being provided by a qualified professional. Dr. Vivian Okafor, who had been quietly assisting throughout the confrontation, finally spoke up. "I've worked alongside Dr. Pemberton for 2 years," she said to the crowd. "She's the most skilled veterinarian I've ever known. Animals that other vets would give up on, she saves. She works longer hours, cares more deeply, and asks for less recognition than anyone in our field." Renee Blackwell was becoming increasingly isolated as the truth emerged. Her social media followers were abandoning her narrative en masse, and some were even sharing the stream to mock her mistake. The confident woman who had started filming 20 minutes ago was now frantically trying to control a situation that was spiraling completely out of her grasp. "This is a setup," she declared desperately. "They're all lying to protect each other. How convenient that everyone here suddenly knows her personally." But her words rang hollow now. Too many people had spoken. Too many details had been shared. Too much genuine emotion had been displayed for this to be any kind of conspiracy. Dr. Yara Pemberton stood up slowly, wiping her hands on a clean towel. Both dogs were stable, their wounds properly treated, their conditions no longer life-threatening. She had done what she set out to do despite every obstacle placed in her way. The crowd's mood had completely transformed. Where once there had been curiosity and uncertainty, now there was admiration and support. People were approaching to thank her, to ask about the dog's conditions, to express their gratitude for her service, both military and civilian. "Dr. Pemberton," Captain Larson said formally, "on behalf of the entire police department, I want to thank you for your quick action today. Rex and Bruno are alive because of your skill and dedication." The vindication was beginning. Dr. Yara Pemberton could feel it. But more than that, she could see in the faces around her that this moment was becoming something larger than just clearing her name. It was becoming a recognition of everything she had worked for, everything she had sacrificed, and everything she represented. As Bruno lifted his head and looked at her with trusting brown eyes, Dr. Yara Pemberton knew that sometimes the worst moments could transform into the most meaningful ones. The truth had a way of emerging, even when it seemed buried under prejudice and assumptions. The real reckoning for Renee Blackwell was just beginning, but for now, Dr. Yara Pemberton was focused on what mattered most: 2 wounded officers who were going to make full recoveries because she had been in the right place at the right time with the right skills and the courage to use them. The crowd parted as a sleek white news van pulled up to the curb, its satellite dish gleaming under the afternoon sun. Channel 7's logo blazed across the side as reporter Amber Nguyen stepped out, her black hair pulled into a professional bun, wearing a crisp navy blazer and matching skirt. Her cameraman followed, already shouldering his equipment as they surveyed the scene. Dr. Yara Pemberton looked up from where she knelt beside Bruno, who was now resting comfortably on the clean blanket. The German Shepherd's breathing had stabilized, and his wounds were properly dressed. Rex lay nearby, alert and calm, his tail giving a weak wag as Officer Calvin Monroe approached to check on him. "Dr. Pemberton?" Amber Nguyen's voice carried the polished authority of someone accustomed to breaking news. "I'm Amber Nguyen from Channel 7 News. We received multiple tips about an incident involving you and injured police dogs. Would you be willing to speak with us on camera?" Dr. Yara Pemberton stood slowly, brushing dust from her green scrubs. Her blue jacket remained pristine, despite the emergency treatment she'd performed. "Of course, I believe it's important that people understand what really happened here today." Meanwhile, 20 feet away, Renee Blackwell sat in her red BMW convertible, frantically tapping at her phone screen. Her red blazer was wrinkled now, and strands of her blonde hair had escaped their perfect styling. Her manicured fingers moved desperately across the screen, trying to delete the inflammatory posts she'd made during her live stream. But the internet had already captured everything. Screenshots circulated faster than she could remove the original content. "Ma'am, are you okay?" A young man with a concerned expression approached her car window. "Fine, I'm fine," Renee snapped, not looking up from her phone. "Just mind your own business." The cameraman positioned himself as Amber Nguyen faced Dr. Yara Pemberton. Behind them, the veterinary clinic provided a professional backdrop, its clean white exterior and clear signage establishing Dr. Yara Pemberton's legitimacy beyond question. "We're live in 3, 2, 1. The cameraman signaled. "This is Amber Nguyen reporting from downtown, where an extraordinary situation has unfolded this afternoon. I'm here with Dr. Yara Pemberton, a local veterinarian who has been treating injured police K9 units." Amber turned to face her subject. "Dr. Pemberton, can you tell our viewers what happened here today?" Dr. Yara Pemberton's posture was straight and professional, her military bearing evident as she faced the camera. "Earlier today, 2 police dogs were injured during an emergency drug raid. Officer Monroe contacted me directly because his K9 partner needed immediate medical attention. I've been working with the police department's K9 unit for 5 years, so this type of emergency response is part of my regular service. Can you describe the dog's injuries and the treatment you provided?" Rex suffered a shallow gunshot wound to his rear leg, while Bruno had multiple lacerations from broken glass. Both required immediate stabilization and wound care. The most critical aspect was controlling bleeding and preventing shock while arranging transport for surgery. Dr. Yara Pemberton's voice remained steady and informative. "Both dogs are stable now and should make full recoveries." From her car, Renee Blackwell could hear every word. Her stomach dropped as she realized how professional and knowledgeable Dr. Yara Pemberton sounded. The comments on her social media posts were becoming increasingly hostile as people began to understand what had really transpired. Officer Calvin Monroe approached the news crew, his short-sleeved uniform bearing the dust and stress of the day's events. His face was drawn with emotion as he looked between his recovering K9 partner and the veterinarian who had saved Rex's life. "Officer Monroe," Amber Nguyen addressed him directly. "You've worked with Dr. Pemberton before?" Calvin's voice cracked slightly as he began speaking. "Dr. Pemberton isn't just our K9 veterinarian. She's saved more police dogs than I can count. 3 years ago, my first partner, Duke, was stabbed during an arrest. Dr. Pemberton operated on him for 6 hours straight, never charging the department a penny for the emergency surgery." He paused, collecting himself. "Duke lived another 2 years because of her. She's family to every K9 handler in this department." The raw emotion in his testimony was unmistakable. Several bystanders who had been filming with their phones now lowered their devices, moved by the officer's words. Dr. Vivian Okafor stepped forward, her orange top and blue jacket bright against the afternoon sky. "I'd like to add something," she said to Amber Nguyen. "Dr. Pemberton graduated summa cum laude from veterinary school and served 8 years as an Army Veterinary Corps officer. She's treated everything from bomb-sniffing dogs in Afghanistan to search and rescue animals after natural disasters. Her credentials are impeccable. Renee Blackwell finally looked up from her phone to see the news interview taking place. Panic flooded her features as she realized the full scope of her mistake. She quickly started her car engine, hoping to slip away unnoticed, but the crowd had grown too large. Her red BMW was effectively trapped by the gathering of onlookers, news vehicles, and police cars. Dr. Pemberton, Amber continued, we understand there was some confusion earlier about your presence here. Can you comment on that? Dr. Yara Pemberton chose her words carefully. There was a misunderstanding. A concerned citizen saw me treating the injured animals and didn't realize I was providing authorized veterinary care. I can appreciate someone's desire to protect animals from harm, but it's important to understand the full situation before taking action. Her diplomatic response only highlighted her professionalism. The crowd murmured approvingly at her gracious handling of what everyone now understood had been a racially motivated confrontation. A black sedan pulled up, and Mayor Gerald Whitfield emerged, wearing an orange polo shirt under his signature blue jacket. At 62, his graying hair and distinguished bearing commanded immediate attention. He had clearly rushed from another engagement after seeing the news coverage on his phone. The mayor strode directly to Dr. Yara Pemberton, extending his hand. Dr. Pemberton, I came as soon as I heard about this incident. On behalf of the entire city, I want to apologize for any harassment you experienced while providing essential emergency care to our police animals. Amber Nguyen quickly repositioned to capture this unexpected development. Mayor Whitfield, you're familiar with Dr. Pemberton's work? Absolutely. Dr. Pemberton has been a cornerstone of our K9 program for years. Her clinic provides outstanding care for our working animals, and her military service record speaks for itself. She received a Bronze Star for her veterinary work in combat zones. The mayor's voice carried the weight of official authority. What happened here today was completely unacceptable, and we will be reviewing all aspects of this incident. Renee Blackwell had managed to inch her car forward a few feet, but Amber Nguyen noticed the movement. The reporter's investigative instincts kicked in as she remembered the earlier chaos and the well-dressed woman who had been making accusations. Ma'am, in the red BMW, Amber called out, approaching the vehicle with her cameraman following. You were involved in the earlier incident. Would you like to comment on today's events? Renee's face went pale as the camera focused on her through the windshield. She had no choice but to roll down her window, knowing that refusing would look even worse. I was trying to protect the animals, Renee stammered. Her earlier confidence completely evaporated. I saw what looked like abuse and felt I had to intervene. Multiple witnesses report that you continued making accusations even after Dr. Pemberton showed you her veterinary license and explained the situation. Can you comment on that? Renee's hands gripped the steering wheel tightly. It looked suspicious. Someone working on injured animals in a parking lot. I just wanted to make sure they were getting proper care. Dr. Pemberton is clearly a licensed professional providing emergency veterinary services. Why did you continue to insist she was committing animal abuse? Amber's questions were becoming more pointed. I don't know, I made a mistake, okay? Renee's voice rose defensively. I was trying to help the animals. Is it possible that your assumptions were influenced by Dr. Pemberton's race? Amber asked directly. The question hung in the air like a thunderclap. Renee's mouth opened and closed several times before she managed to speak. I'm not a racist. I support animal rights. This has nothing to do with race. But her phone, still visible on the passenger seat, showed the social media comments that were pouring in. People had identified her as Renee Blackwell, socialite and board member of several high-profile charities. Her earlier posts and live stream videos were being shared widely, and the public response was overwhelmingly negative. Dr. Yara Pemberton, still within earshot of the exchange, maintained her professional composure despite the vindication she felt watching her accusers squirm under scrutiny. The satisfaction was tempered by her focus on the bigger picture, ensuring this incident led to positive change rather than just personal revenge. Captain Sophia Larson joined the mayor and Dr. Yara Pemberton, her muscular frame filling out her uniform as she surveyed the scene. The department will be conducting a full review of how this situation was handled initially, she announced to the gathered crowd. Dr. Pemberton's exemplary service record speaks for itself, and we're grateful for her continued partnership with our K9 unit. Social media was exploding with reaction videos and commentary. Local influencers were picking up the story, with many focusing on the racial dynamics of the confrontation. The hashtag Dr. Pemberton began trending as people shared the news coverage and their own reactions to Renee Blackwell's behavior. Officer Calvin Monroe knelt beside Rex, who lifted his head at his handler's approach. "You're going to be fine, boy," Calvin whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Dr. Pemberton fixed you up real good." Dr. Vivian Okafor approached her colleague and friend. "The clinic's phone has been ringing non-stop," she said quietly. "Reporters, supporters, even some veterinary schools wanting to discuss your handling of this situation." Dr. Yara Pemberton nodded, watching as Bruno's tail wagged weakly from his resting position. Despite everything that had happened, seeing the dogs recovering made all the stress worthwhile. This was why she had become a veterinarian, to heal and protect animals regardless of the circumstances surrounding their care. Amber Nguyen concluded her interview with the mayor and approached Dr. Yara Pemberton for a final comment. "Dr. Pemberton, what would you like people to take away from today's events?" "I'd like people to understand that emergency veterinary care sometimes happens in unconventional locations," Dr. Yara Pemberton replied thoughtfully. "But more importantly, I hope this reminds everyone to gather facts before making accusations. These dogs needed help, and that's all that mattered to me." As the news crew prepared to leave, Renee Blackwell finally managed to navigate her BMW away from the scene. Her phone continued buzzing with notifications, none of them positive. Her social circle was already distancing themselves, and she could see her carefully constructed reputation crumbling in real time. The crowd began to disperse as Rex and Bruno were carefully loaded into a police transport vehicle for the short ride to Dr. Yara Pemberton's clinic for follow-up care. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the parking lot where, just hours earlier, a simple act of veterinary compassion had triggered a confrontation that would have lasting consequences for everyone involved. Dr. Yara Pemberton gathered her emergency medical supplies, her movements efficient and practiced. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities, but today had proven something important about standing firm in the face of injustice while maintaining professional integrity. The sleek black sedan pulled up to the clinic just as the afternoon sun cast sharp shadows across the parking lot. Attorney Natalie Cross stepped out, her red blazer immaculate and her expression all business. She surveyed the scene with the practiced eye of someone who had handled more discrimination cases than she cared to count. Her heels clicked purposefully against the asphalt as she approached Dr. Yara Pemberton, who was still kneeling beside Rex, monitoring his breathing. "Dr. Pemberton, I'm Natalie Cross from Cross & Associates," she said, extending a firm handshake. "I saw the live stream and came immediately. We need to document everything that's happened here today." Dr. Yara Pemberton looked up, her green scrubs still stained with the dog's blood, her blue jacket draped over her shoulders. "I appreciate you coming, but right now my priority is making sure these dogs are stable." "Of course, but while you work, I'm going to preserve evidence." Natalie immediately began photographing the medical supplies, the dog's condition, and the overall scene. She approached several bystanders who had witnessed the confrontation, collecting contact information and brief statements. Renee Blackwell, who had been standing near the clinic entrance frantically scrolling through her phone, noticed the attorney's arrival. Her red blazer now looked wrinkled, her white pants showing grass stains from when she had knelt to film closer shots of the dogs. The confidence that had carried her through the first hour of this confrontation was rapidly dissolving. "I need to go," Renee announced to no one in particular, backing toward her silver Mercedes. "Ma'am, you're not going anywhere just yet," Detective Owen Barrett called out. "We need a full statement about your 911 call." But it wasn't the detective's words that stopped Renee. A group of bystanders who had been quietly observing the situation suddenly found their voices. "You should be ashamed of yourself," called out an elderly black woman in a blue jacket. "That woman was helping those poor dogs, and you treated her like a criminal." "I saw the whole thing," added a young man holding his phone. "You were completely out of line. This is going viral for all the wrong reasons." More voices joined in, creating a wall of accountability that Renee couldn't simply walk away from. Her face flushed as she realized her social media strategy had backfired spectacularly. The comments on her live stream were now overwhelmingly negative, with viewers calling her out for racial profiling and harassment. Channel 7 reporter Amber Muween positioned herself strategically to capture Dr. Yara Pemberton's continued professionalism amid the chaos. "Dr. Pemberton, can you tell our viewers about your background and what exactly you were doing when this confrontation began?" Dr. Yara Pemberton gently stroked Rex's head as the German Shepherd's breathing steadied. "I'm a licensed veterinarian and former Army Veterinary Corps officer. These two canine officers were injured during a drug raid this morning. Officer Monroe brought them here because they needed immediate medical attention. Rex had a bullet fragment near his shoulder, and Bruno suffered lacerations from glass. Both dogs are now stable and will make full recoveries." "And your military background?" "I served 8 years in the Army Veterinary Corps, including 2 deployments. I've been treating the police department's canine units for 5 years since opening my practice here." Her voice remained steady, professional, even as chaos swirled around her. While Dr. Yara Pemberton spoke to the reporter, her phone buzzed constantly with notifications. Social media influencer Corey Walsh, known for his thoughtful breakdowns of viral incidents, had begun streaming his analysis to his 2 million followers. "Y'all, I need to break this down for you because this is exactly the kind of racial profiling we talk about," Corey said into his phone camera, his orange top bright against the clinic's white wall. "Dr. Yara Pemberton is a decorated Army veteran and licensed veterinarian. She's literally saving police dogs' lives, and this woman Renee Blackwell called 911 on her. The audacity is unreal." His followers flooded the comments with fire emojis and outraged responses. The incident was being shared across platforms faster than Renee could delete her original posts. Dr. Vivian Okafor approached Dr. Yara Pemberton with an update. "Both dogs' vitals are excellent. Rex's wound is clean and closed, and Bruno's lacerations are healing well. You did incredible work under impossible circumstances. Thank you for having my back out there," Dr. Yara Pemberton replied, finally allowing herself a moment of relief. "I couldn't have managed without your support." Attorney Natalie Cross finished interviewing witnesses and approached Renee Blackwell, who was now sitting in her car with the door open, phone pressed to her ear. No, you don't understand," Renee was saying frantically. "It was a misunderstanding. I was trying to protect the animals. I had no way of knowing she was actually a veterinarian." But the voice on the other end was clearly not sympathetic. Renee's face went pale as she listened. "Mrs. Blackwell," Natalie Cross interrupted politely, "I'm documenting this incident for potential legal action. Your harassment of Dr. Pemberton was filmed by multiple sources, including your own live stream. I wanted to give you an opportunity to provide your perspective." "I don't have to talk to you," Renee snapped, but her voice lacked conviction. "No, you don't. But this situation is already public record. The question is whether you want to be part of finding a resolution, or if you prefer to let the courts and public opinion handle it entirely." Renee's phone rang again. This time, the caller ID made her face go completely white. Blackwell Foundation, she answered weakly. The voice on the other end was loud enough for Natalie to hear fragments. Viral video. Embarrassment to the organization. Effective immediately. Renee ended the call and sat in stunned silence. Her position on the board of the prestigious charity that bore her family's name had just been suspended pending a full review. Detective Owen Barrett approached Dr. Yara Pemberton as she packed her emergency medical supplies. His posture was different now, respectful rather than suspicious. "Dr. Pemberton, I owe you a formal apology," he said, removing his hat. "I should have recognized you immediately, and I should have verified the situation before treating you as a potential suspect. Your professionalism under pressure has been exemplary. I understand you were responding to a 911 call." Dr. Yara Pemberton replied graciously, "You did your job. I just wish the situation hadn't escalated to this point when these dogs needed immediate care." Officer Calvin Monroe, who had been coordinating with his supervisor about the body cam footage, joined the conversation. "Detective Barrett, the footage shows everything. Dr. Pemberton's expert treatment, the dog's obvious injuries from the raid, and Mrs. Blackwell's completely unfounded accusations. It's all documented." "Good. Dr. Pemberton, this footage will be part of the official record, and it clearly shows your professional conduct throughout this incident. If you choose to pursue legal action, you have the department's full cooperation." As word spread through the community, local leaders began arriving at the clinic. City Councilwoman Maria Santos, wearing a green top and blue jacket, approached Dr. Yara Pemberton with several other officials. "Dr. Pemberton, we heard what happened and came to offer our support," Councilwoman Santos said. "This kind of harassment is unacceptable in our community, especially when directed at someone who has served our city and country so honorably." Pastor James Williams, from the community's largest church, stepped forward. "Doctor, our congregation has been praying for you since we saw the news. We want you to know that this community sees your true character, not the lies that woman spread." Dr. Yara Pemberton was touched by the outpouring of support, but her attention remained focused on the bigger picture. "I appreciate everyone's kindness, but I hope we can use this situation to start important conversations about assumptions and bias. More importantly, I want people to understand the critical work our canine officers do and the medical care they need." Corey Walsh concluded his social media breakdown with a powerful message to his followers. "This is what grace under pressure looks like. Dr. Pemberton could be angry, could be demanding revenge, but she's focused on the animals and turning this negative into something positive. That's character, y'all." Meanwhile, Renee Blackwell finally emerged from her car, her earlier arrogance completely gone. She looked around at the crowd of community members, reporters, and officials, all of whom now knew exactly who she was and what she had done. I made a mistake," she said quietly to no one in particular. "I thought I was helping." Attorney Natalie Cross documented this statement as well, though she noted that it fell far short of taking full responsibility for the harassment and racial profiling. Dr. Yara Pemberton checked on Rex and Bruno one final time before preparing to transport them to her clinic for continued observation. Both dogs were alert and responsive, their tails wagging weakly when she approached. "You boys are going to be just fine," she murmured, her military training and veterinary expertise having saved their lives despite the chaos surrounding her. As the crowd began to disperse, the contrast was stark. Dr. Yara Pemberton was surrounded by supporters, colleagues, and officials eager to honor her service and professionalism. Renee Blackwell stood alone by her car, scrolling through hundreds of angry messages and watching her social media follower count plummet. The incident that had begun with false accusations and harassment was now transforming into a community rallying cry for justice, professionalism, and the recognition of service that transcends prejudice. Dr. Yara Pemberton had weathered the storm with dignity, and now the consequences were finally reaching the person who truly deserved them. The afternoon sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the clinic parking lot where a decorated Army veteran had been accused of animal abuse while literally saving the lives of police dogs. But justice, like the expert medical care Dr. Yara Pemberton had provided, was finally beginning to heal the damage that had been done. The morning sun streamed through the large windows of the police department's main conference room as Dr. Yara Pemberton adjusted her green blouse and blue jacket, still processing the whirlwind of events from the past week. The fluorescent lights overhead cast everything in sharp clarity, making the moment feel almost surreal. Captain Sophia Larson, her muscular frame filling out her long-sleeved uniform impeccably, stood at the podium with a genuine smile that transformed her usually stern features. Ladies and gentlemen, we gather today not just to recognize exceptional service, but to celebrate someone who embodies the very best of what it means to serve our community. Captain Larson began, her voice carrying across the packed room. Dr. Yara Pemberton has been quietly saving the lives of our canine officers for 5 years. But last week, she did something extraordinary under the most challenging circumstances imaginable. Dr. Yara felt her chest swell with deep satisfaction as she watched Rex and Bruno, both German shepherds now fully recovered, sitting alert beside Officer Calvin Monroe. Their coats gleamed with health, their eyes bright and focused. The transformation from the wounded animals she had treated in her clinic parking lot seemed miraculous. Yet she knew it was simply the result of proper veterinary care delivered under pressure. Officer Calvin Monroe stepped forward, his short-sleeved uniform crisp and professional. Rex took a bullet during our raid on the drug operation. Without Dr. Pemberton's immediate intervention, I would have lost my partner. But more than that, she worked on him while being harassed, filmed, and accused of animal abuse. She never wavered, never lost focus on what mattered most, saving these dogs' lives. The room erupted in applause, and Dr. Yara felt tears threatening to spill over. This official recognition felt like vindication not just for the incident with Renee Blackwell, but for every late night she had spent in surgery, every emergency call she had answered, every moment she had dedicated to caring for animals who served and protected the community. Mayor Gerald Whitfield rose from his seat, his orange shirt and blue jacket combination making him easily recognizable even in the crowded room. The overhead lights caught the silver in his hair as he approached the microphone with a folder in his hands. Dr. Pemberton, he began, his voice carrying the weight of official authority. The city of Hampton has witnessed your dedication, your professionalism, and your unwavering commitment to excellence. Today, I am honored to announce that we are not only presenting you with our highest civilian commendation, but we are also approving expanded funding for your clinic to serve as our official police canine medical center. The announcement sent waves of excitement through the room. Dr. Yara felt her heart racing as she processed what this meant. The expanded funding would allow her to purchase state-of-the-art equipment, hire additional staff, and truly specialize in the unique medical needs of working dogs. The gratitude for these expanded opportunities felt overwhelming, transforming what had started as harassment into the greatest professional advancement of her career. Dr. Vivian Okafor, wearing her signature orange top and blue jacket, stood and applauded enthusiastically. As her colleague and closest friend, she had witnessed every struggle Dr. Yara had faced building her practice. Now, seeing this moment of triumph, her joy was almost as visible as Dr. Yara's own. The ceremony continued as Mayor Whitfield presented Dr. Yara with a crystal plaque and a ceremonial key to the city. As she held the awards, the weight of them seemed to represent not just recognition, but responsibility. She was being entrusted with the care of every canine officer in the department, a responsibility she did not take lightly. "I want to thank everyone for this incredible honor," Dr. Yara said as she stepped to the microphone. "But I also want to remind everyone that this recognition belongs not just to me, but to every veterinarian who works tirelessly to care for animals, often without recognition or fanfare. These dogs, Rex and Bruno, they're heroes. They put their lives on the line just like their human partners. They deserve nothing less than the best medical care we can provide. As the formal ceremony concluded, Dr. Yara noticed the absence that had been weighing on her mind. While she basked in recognition and support, somewhere across town, Renee Blackwell was facing very different consequences for her actions. Attorney Natalie Cross had briefed Dr. Yara on the legal proceedings that morning. Renee Blackwell was facing harassment charges, and a restraining order had been issued requiring her to stay at least 500 feet away from Dr. Yara's clinic and residence. More devastating for someone of Renee's social standing, her prestigious position on the board of 3 different charity organizations had been terminated. Her country club membership had been revoked. Even her closest friends had distanced themselves, unwilling to be associated with the viral video that had exposed her behavior. Dr. Yara found herself experiencing unexpected compassion, even for Renee Blackwell's consequences. While justice was being served, she couldn't help but recognize that Renee's life had been completely upended. It served as a sobering reminder that actions, especially those captured on video and broadcast to the world, carried lasting consequences. The sound of familiar voices drew her attention to the conference room entrance. 3 men in military bearing, wearing orange shirts and blue jackets, entered with the disciplined posture she recognized immediately. Her heart leaped as she recognized Staff Sergeant Marcus Williams, Sergeant First Class David Chen, and Corporal James Anderson, members of her old veterinary unit from her Army days. "Dr. Pemberton, ma'am," Marcus said with a grin that took years off his weathered face. "We came as soon as we heard. Couldn't let our unit's finest veterinarian face this alone." The pride in military brotherhood support flooded through her as she embraced each of them. These men had served alongside her in Afghanistan, had witnessed her treating wounded military working dogs under enemy fire, had seen her dedication to animal welfare in the most challenging conditions imaginable. "Tell them about Kabul," David encouraged as reporter Amber Nguyen from Channel 7 approached with her camera crew. "Tell them about the day she saved 6 dogs during that mortar attack." As Dr. Yara found herself recounting stories of her military service, she watched the reporter's eyes widen with each detail. The Bronze Star she had received for treating wounded animals while under enemy fire, the numerous commendations for field veterinary excellence, the leadership she had shown training local Afghan veterinarians, all of it painted a picture of service and dedication that stood in stark contrast to Renee Blackwell's baseless accusations. "Dr. Pemberton," reporter Nguyen asked, "how does it feel to go from being accused of animal abuse to being recognized as one of the city's most valuable veterinary professionals, all in the span of a week?" "It feels like justice," Dr. Yara replied thoughtfully. "But more than that, it feels like an opportunity. This platform, this recognition, it gives me a chance to advocate for animal welfare and veterinary education in ways I never could before. If something positive can come from a negative experience, then maybe it was worth enduring." The camera continued rolling as Officer Calvin Monroe shared more stories of Dr. Yara's dedication to the K9 unit. He described midnight emergency calls she had answered without complaint, complex surgeries she had performed to save police dogs' lives, and the genuine care she showed for every animal that came through her clinic doors. Meanwhile, across the city, Renee Blackwell was discovering the full extent of her social media downfall. Her Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter accounts had been flooded with thousands of negative comments. The original video she had posted, intended to showcase her as an animal rights hero, had been shared millions of times with commentary exposing her behavior as racial profiling and harassment of a military veteran. Unable to bear the constant notifications and public shaming, Renee had deactivated all her social media accounts that morning. But the internet never forgets, and screenshots and recordings of her posts continued circulating. Social media influencer Corey Walsh had created a comprehensive breakdown of the incident that had garnered over 2 million views, turning Renee into a cautionary tale about the dangers of making assumptions based on racial bias. Dr. Yara learned about these developments through Dr. Vivian Okafor, who had been monitoring the social media response throughout the week. While part of her felt vindicated by the public support, she found herself more focused on the positive opportunities emerging from the situation. The veterinary community had rallied around her in unprecedented ways. The American Veterinary Medical Association had reached out, offering collaboration opportunities. 3 veterinary schools had invited her to speak about professionalism under pressure. A major pharmaceutical company specializing in animal health had offered to sponsor her expanded clinic operations. Dr. Pemberton called Dr. Rebecca Martinez, the dean of the state veterinary school, as she approached wearing a professional red blazer. "We've been following your story, and we'd like to discuss establishing a scholarship fund in your name for students from underserved communities who want to specialize in working with service animals." The suggestion resonated deeply with Dr. Yara's determination to use her platform positively. Growing up, she had faced numerous barriers pursuing her veterinary education. The idea that her experience could create opportunities for other young people from similar backgrounds felt like the most meaningful outcome possible. As the day progressed, the recognition continued building. The State Veterinary Board issued a public statement commending her professionalism and expertise. The International Association of Police Canine Handlers announced she would receive their annual Excellence Award at their national conference. Even the Military Veterinary Corps reached out to discuss consulting opportunities for training the next generation of military animal care specialists. Officer Calvin Monroe approached her as the crowd began to thin. "Dr. Pemberton, I wanted you to know that the entire K9 unit voted unanimously. We're organizing an annual ceremony to honor your years of service to our dogs. It'll be called the Yara Pemberton Excellence in Canine Care Award." The gesture touched her deeply. To have her name associated with excellent animal care, to know that future veterinarians would be recognized for following the standards she had set, felt like the ultimate professional achievement. As evening approached and the formal events concluded, Dr. Yara stood in her clinic, now officially designated as the Hampton Police Department K9 Medical Center. The new equipment arriving next week would transform the space into a state-of-the-art facility. The additional staff she could now hire would allow her to expand services not just for police dogs, but for service animals throughout the region. Rex and Bruno rested comfortably in the recovery area, their wounds now barely visible scars that would remind everyone of their bravery during the drug raid. Dr. Yara performed final checks on both dogs, marveling at their complete recovery and eager spirits. Dr. Vivian Okafor joined her in the quiet clinic as the sun set outside the large windows. "A week ago, we were treating wounded dogs in a parking lot while being accused of abuse. Tonight, we're running the official K9 Medical Center with expanded funding and citywide recognition. It doesn't seem real." "What seems most real to me," Dr. Yara replied, gently stroking Rex's fur, "is that we get to continue doing what we love, caring for animals, but now with the resources and recognition to do it better than ever before." The week had taught her that injustice and prejudice still existed, but it had also shown her that truth, professionalism, and community support could overcome even the most challenging circumstances. As she locked up the clinic that night, Dr. Yara felt not just vindicated, but empowered to use her expanded platform to make lasting positive changes for animals, veterinarians, and her community. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities, but tonight she felt the deep satisfaction of knowing that justice had been served and her life's work had been recognized and valued by those who mattered most. 6 months had transformed everything. Dr. Yara Pemberton stood in the gleaming examination room of her expanded veterinary clinic, sunlight streaming through oversized windows that illuminated the state-of-the-art medical equipment surrounding her. The Regional Canine Medical Center sign outside bore her name in bold letters, a testament to how one moment of injustice had blossomed into something magnificent. She wore her signature green scrubs and blue jacket, the same colors she'd worn that fateful day in the parking lot. But everything else had changed. The cramped clinic of her past had grown into a sprawling facility with specialized surgical suites, advanced diagnostic equipment, and a dedicated canine rehabilitation wing. City grants and private donations had poured in after her story went viral, turning her modest practice into a beacon of excellence. The examination room door opened, and Officer Calvin Monroe stepped inside, wearing his crisp, short-sleeved uniform, his face beaming with pride. Rex trotted beside him, his coat shining with health, his gait strong and confident. The German shepherd, who had once lain bleeding in a parking lot, now carried himself with the dignity of a decorated officer. "Dr. Pemberton, you should see this boy in action," Officer Monroe said, his voice thick with emotion. "Last week Rex tracked down a missing child in the woods, found her in 45 minutes. The parents were crying, thanking us, but I told them the real hero was the vet who saved his life." Dr. Yara Pemberton knelt down, running her hands along Rex's flanks, checking his muscle tone and flexibility. The scars from his bullet wounds had faded to thin silver lines, barely visible beneath his thick coat. Her fingers traced the areas where she'd once worked frantically to stop bleeding, now finding only healthy tissue and strong heartbeats. "He's perfect," she said, her voice carrying deep satisfaction. "Better than perfect. He's stronger than he was before the injury." Rex's tail wagged as she examined him, his brown eyes bright with intelligence and trust. Bruno waited in the adjacent examination room with another handler, equally recovered, equally magnificent. The sight of both dogs thriving filled her with a joy that transcended professional pride. "The scholarship announcement is next week," Dr. Yara Pemberton said, updating Officer Monroe on her latest project. "The Pemberton Foundation for Veterinary Excellence. We're funding full scholarships for 5 students from underserved communities every year." The foundation had been her idea, born from watching young people in her neighborhood who possessed the passion for animal care but lacked the resources to pursue veterinary education. The incident with Renee Blackwell had given her a platform, but she'd chosen to use that platform to lift others rather than simply bask in vindication. Officer Monroe nodded approvingly. "Those kids are lucky. They'll learn from the best." As he prepared to leave with Rex, Dr. Yara Pemberton felt the familiar surge of fulfillment that came from seeing animals healthy and handlers grateful. This was why she'd endured years of schooling, military service, and long nights in emergency surgeries, not for recognition or revenge, but for moments like this when healing made a tangible difference in the world. Later that afternoon, Dr. Yara Pemberton found herself at the grocery store, selecting fresh vegetables for dinner. The automatic doors slid open, and she stepped into the bright fluorescent lighting, her mind already planning the evening's meal. She'd developed a routine of cooking elaborate dinners as a way to decompress from intense days at the clinic. As she rounded the corner into the produce section, she nearly collided with someone's stocking shelves. The woman wore a simple blue uniform shirt and matching pants, her hair pulled back in a functional ponytail. It took Dr. Yara Pemberton a moment to recognize the face that had once been perfectly made up and contorted with accusations. Renee Blackwell froze, her hands still gripping a bag of apples. The confident socialite who had once commanded attention with her red blazer and designer accessories was gone. In her place stood a woman whose circumstances had clearly changed dramatically, her face etched with the kind of exhaustion that came from starting over at the bottom. "Dr. Pemberton," Renee Blackwell said quietly, her voice barely audible above the store's background music. I I didn't expect to see you here." Dr. Yara Pemberton could have walked away. She could have ignored the woman who had tried to destroy her reputation and criminalize her life-saving work. Instead, she stood still, waiting to see what Renee Blackwell would say. "I know this doesn't change anything," Renee Blackwell continued, her words tumbling out in a rush. "But I need you to know how sorry I am. What I did was wrong. It was racist and cruel, and I've spent every day since then thinking about how different things could have been if I'd just listened to you." The apology hung in the air between them, surrounded by the ordinary sounds of grocery shopping and everyday life. Dr. Yara Pemberton studied Renee Blackwell's face, seeing genuine remorse where once there had been entitled anger. "Those dogs could have died because of my stupidity," Renee Blackwell whispered. "You were saving lives, and I was so convinced that I knew better than everyone else. I lost everything, and I deserved to lose everything. But knowing that I almost cost those animals their lives, that's what haunts me most." Dr. Yara Pemberton felt something shift inside her chest, a loosening of tension she hadn't realized she'd been carrying. Grace had always been more powerful than grudges, and forgiveness served her spirit better than bitterness. "I accept your apology, Renee," she said simply. "We all make mistakes. What matters is learning from them." Renee Blackwell's eyes filled with tears. "You're a better person than I ever was." "You're working now," Dr. Yara Pemberton observed, noting the name tag on Renee Blackwell's shirt. "That's honest work. That's something to respect." They parted ways in the grocery store. Two women whose lives had intersected violently, but who had found a moment of peace in the produce aisle. Dr. Yara Pemberton continued her shopping with a lighter heart, knowing that forgiveness had freed them both. Back at the clinic, Dr. Vivian Okafor was preparing for the evening's emergency surgeries. She wore her orange top and blue jacket, the uniform they'd standardized for the expanded practice. As full business partners, they'd transformed not just the physical space, but the entire scope of their veterinary services. "The veterinary school called again," Dr. Vivian Okafor reported. "They want to include our case study in next semester's curriculum. Professionalism under pressure. The Pemberton incident is apparently required reading for third-year students." Dr. Yara Pemberton smiled at the irony. Her worst day had become a teaching tool, helping future veterinarians understand how to maintain dignity and focus when faced with unfair accusations and public scrutiny. Students across the country would learn from her experience, carrying forward the lessons of grace under pressure. The phone rang, and Dr. Vivian Okafor answered with their new standard greeting. "Regional Canine Medical Center, this is Dr. Okafor." Captain Sophia Larson arrived an hour later, her muscular frame filling out her long-sleeved uniform as she entered the clinic's main lobby. She carried an official envelope with the state seal, her expression serious but pleased. "Dr. Pemberton," she announced formally, "I have the honor of informing you that the governor has appointed you as the state's first canine veterinary consultant. You'll be responsible for establishing medical protocols for all law enforcement canine units across the state." The appointment represented the culmination of everything that had begun in a parking lot 6 months earlier. Dr. Yara Pemberton would now influence the care of police dogs throughout the entire state, ensuring that animals like Rex and Bruno received the highest standard of medical attention. "The ceremony is next month," Captain Sophia Larson continued. "The governor wants to present the appointment personally. There will be media coverage, recognition of your military service, the whole ceremony." As evening settled over the clinic, Dr. Yara Pemberton found herself in the training room with 3 veterinary students who'd won partial scholarships through her foundation. They wore scrubs similar to hers, their faces bright with enthusiasm and determination. 2 young women and 1 young man, all from communities where veterinary school had seemed like an impossible dream. "Remember," she told them as they practiced suturing techniques, "our job isn't just about the animals. We're serving the humans who love those animals, the police officers whose partners get injured, the families whose pets need surgery, the communities that depend on working animals. Every stitch you place carries someone's hope. One of the students, a young woman named Maya, looked up from her practice dummy. Dr. Pemberton, when you were treating Rex and Bruno that day, and everyone was yelling at you, how did you stay focused? Dr. Yara Pemberton paused, remembering the chaos and accusations, the cameras and the crowd. I remembered why I became a veterinarian, she said, not for recognition or to prove anything to anyone else. I became a vet because animals deserved advocates, and in that moment, Rex and Bruno needed an advocate more than I needed to defend myself. The students nodded, absorbing the lesson that would serve them throughout their careers. Excellence wasn't about external validation, but about internal commitment to purpose. As the day ended, Dr. Yara Pemberton walked through her expanded clinic, turning off lights and checking on the overnight patients. The facility hummed with quiet efficiency, a temple of healing that had risen from a moment of injustice. She paused at the wall of photographs that chronicled the clinic's evolution, pictures of Rex and Bruno in recovery, images from the ribbon-cutting ceremony, photos of scholarship recipients, and newspaper clippings documenting her state appointment. But the photo that meant the most showed her with a group of elementary school students during a career day presentation, their faces bright with curiosity about veterinary medicine. From the parking lot to the state house, from accusations to appointments, from one woman's prejudice to a foundation that would educate future veterinarians for decades to come, Dr. Yara Pemberton had transformed injustice into impact, choosing growth over grievance and service over self-pity. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new animals to heal, new students to teach, and new opportunities to serve. But tonight, in the quiet of her clinic, Dr. Yara Pemberton felt the deep satisfaction of a life lived with purpose, a mission that had survived every attack and emerged stronger than ever. The story that began with accusations had become a legacy of healing, proving that character isn't revealed in comfort but in crisis, and that the most powerful response to injustice isn't revenge, but relentless commitment to doing good in the world. You just heard a story that history tried to overlook. If it stayed with you, take a second to stand with it. Subscribe, share, and help us keep telling the stories that deserve light, not silence.